Boston MIT node of the Computational Law and Blockchain Festival. And what we are, and so right now these are kind of mid-hat report outs from the project teams and then also the breakout discussion. So first up, ball and chain.
Great. So we are the ball and chain. Our concept is around digitizing prenuptial agreements and simple contracts and things of that nature. So just to kind of set the table, there are 2 million marriages every year, 50% end in divorce, and only 3% of those 2 million marriages actually have prenuptial agreements in place. So we think that happens because there's a large barrier to entry and it's a little taboo. So we're going to try and simplify and eliminate both of those things by reducing the cost, by using a neutral kind of portal to where we can develop a contract and add it to a ledger in hash form and get it signed so it can be easier to use. So for our work today, so we stood up a website on AWS, Simple Storage, and then we started to kind of build out our form and framework. So I'll kick it to Michael and talk about kind of the contract.
Yeah, so basically we just took a simple contract template. We went through each part of it that would have different variables and assigned the different variables to those parts.
Yep, so the thought would be we would take those variable names, take this kind of generic contract, and then ask a series of kind of principle-oriented questions to be able to determine kind of the posture for the prenuptial agreement to make it kind of fair to all parties. So yeah, that's where we're at, ballandchain.com.
Awesome. The ball and chain's never been so free. Tax fun. You guys ready? Taxes can be fun again. Just add blockchain.
Hello, everybody. We have yet to think of a more clever name. What we are working on is an app a smart contract that verifies if a person was outside of New York City for greater than 183 days, then they are liable for a much lower tax than if they spend more than 183 days in New York. So we're writing a smart contract that verifies that through a smartphone. I'll hand it over to Brian to give you guys the details of what we've been up with.
Yeah, sure. So our idea is that your phone is always with you. Your phone sends your lat long to to this oracle. The oracle says whether you're within the city limits or not. You only have the law says as long as you're within New York City for a minute, that counts as being a resident for that day. And there are some other exemptions that we didn't deal with yet about like passing through New York to, if you go to the airport, then that doesn't count as a residence day. But in any case, then we worked through some of the issues of verifying, that the phone is with you. How would you do that? Well, maybe if you have sufficient biometric check-ins on your phone, that would be good enough to establish the phone was with you. Then we looked into, someone mentioned phone.space, which is a proof of location so that the city could trust that the GPS coordinates that were being sent to you were in fact the GPS coordinates that represented where you were. And so there's some, things to be ironed out, but in general, it seems like a smart contract approach might actually be doable here and make this whole residency, non-residency tracking simpler and easier and more auditable and verifiable, and thus save cities, allow cities to collect the correct amount of taxes.
Here. And not so fast though. So who liked the pizza today? Anybody like that?
Yeah.
Everybody liked the pizza today. Big thanks to Thompson Reuters Labs and Brian, who doesn't just want to jump in the hack with us. Thank you, Brian. Legal hack.
We're really actually kind of learning as we go along with Solidity. So if there are any Solidity experts or non-experts, then please help us.
I know. Okay.
I'm a
Tax fun. Okay, so next we've got we, the customers. Say, can you see the hack? Here we go.
We the customers. We want to create pretty much a political platform for regular citizens to go on the platform and write their own proposals for bills to be passed. And once they're doing this, they do it in sort of like a GitHub style fashion, where there's a repository so that everything is tracked, the history is there, and things can fork. And once that's done, lawmakers can look at these, see which ones are getting traction, and then that pressure will eventually incentivize them to sort of copy and then paste those bills into things that will actually get passed at their level, at whatever level it may be.
Thank you. Yeah, so one of the main things we see this as simplifying the public policy making process, where if information is stored in containers, or if you have policy ideas that are kind of in, that you can move around between different laws. If you're creating a law in one state, you can borrow good ideas from other states, and they could be tracking the success of those provisions of the laws. This way it will make it a lot easier for a regular citizen to read and understand the bill in order to kind of form their opinion on it, whereas now nobody wants to read a 5,000-page healthcare law. Hopefully this way there will be enough kind of boilerplate things involved that it will be easy for an average person to understand.
I want to read a 5,000-page healthcare law. Yeah. So that's great. We, the customer, kind of using technology to refactor and make available the social compact for the digital age. Excellent hack. Thank you. Duck Bitcoin. Interesting. This is sort of a cameo by a local entrepreneur. Charlie.
I actually go by Charles.
Charles.
Well, so my name is Charles Terrell, and I have a venture capital firm, and we invest in humanity and happiness. And our basic premise is to save the human race from self-destruction.
Here, here.
In order to do this, we have a lot of projects, and these projects all pretty much stem from inventions of mine. I'm an inventor. And so one of the things that we isolated was to provide micro loans through cryptocurrency. And so to get us kicked off, we started with a Bitcoin wallet. It's called Duck Bitcoin. You can go to duckbitcoin.com. Can you hold that on the camera?
Absolutely.
And I'll show you quickly how it works. So it's a paper wallet, and you has the public address is on the outside, and then you open it up. I had one pre-opened, so it'll take me a second to open it. But it's similar. It's similar to the checks that you would get in the mail from some sort of processing center. So you don't have to open it until you're ready to spend it, as we all know.
The Bitcoin again?
There's no Bitcoin with that.
Open
It is
it up.
actually zero.
And what we have is, that is got to be faster.
I have no mic.
So the public address is still on the inside, same one that was on the outside. And then the private key is under this foil, and there's foil on both sides. And we're going to be doing a lot of different things to, I won't go into it now, but there's a lot of security around it. To open it up, you take a pair of scissors and cut it like this. I did that already. And then private key is exposed inside. Now it's a hot wallet. You swipe it and you're done, and you don't use it again. We're going to have all kinds of different versions. We're going to do it for all different kinds of currency. There's going to be all kinds of other security measures. We print the wallets right now on 3 different printing operations to do all the background and lots of the security. And then when we print the keys, we do that in an extremely cold scenario. We're in a room that is, there's obviously no cameras, there's no Wi-Fi, there's no UV, there's no anything. And we basically rip everything out of the computer and print the keys. Once the keys are printed, we take the computer, the mouse, the printer, and we put it in a furnace, and we melt it down. So your keys are going to be very secure. I could go into the seeds and all that, but I'm not going to do that now. But it's just as elaborate. It's ridiculous.
Awesome. So one more time, what's the URL for people who want to find out more?
It's duckduckbitcoin.com, or you can go to cht4.com. That's the venture firm. And I just want to also mention we're working with David Hartspan as our consulting CTO. Some of you might know him, and you can see him on the website. We have a lot of other people involved, and hopefully I won't drop it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank
you. Duck Bitcoin. The goose that laid the Bitcoin egg, perhaps. No. Okay, so utopia.id. That was an example, by the way.
Hey, Daza?
Yes.
Don't forget to do sanction.io.
Oh, did I forget?
We go next.
Okay, so we can go right after, yeah. Okay, so hot order swap. Come on up. Utopia.
Hi. We'll continue the theme of saving humanity. As broad as it sounds. So how many people here actually feel at home while they're where they are right now? Great.
You mean like where I'm standing right now, or where am I home?
No, like, do you actually feel that you're happily at home?
I belong in Oakland.
Which is on the other side of the country. So that's the question. It's the home versus what it's our feeling of home versus what we think we like and where we think we might actually belong. 1 out of every 4 homeowners actually experiences buyer's remorse. So they bought a house and then they think, hey, I hate this place. What if we used our digital identity to kind of quantify what makes that hard decision for us? What makes our home a home? It can seem a bit out there, it can seem a bit difficult, but it's actually not that difficult if we go by Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You start satisfying a certain bunch of needs down in the hierarchy, and then you go up, and then you realize that things like social interactions are important, the weather is important, and the proximity to grocery stores is no longer as important as people that you're living with. What if we use the identity to be able to create attributes that constitute your heart? So, for example, you want to be among the like-minded people, you like tech, so you go to San Francisco, you're in the Silicon Valley, and you're just happy to hang around this kind of people. You don't care about overinflated house prices because you're in the area that you feel most comfortable with. This is basically the core of our idea. And by using the identity, we would like to quantify these factors and then help you to predict where you will be happier, where you can buy a home, which will make you happier, the area, and also where you could build your own kind of society around yourself with the like-minded people. So basically to create your own utopia, if possible.
Here. Bill, do you want to?
You nailed it. It's myutopia.id.
Myutopia.id. Sanctioned.id. With one of the things we're going to give away, we'll wait for sanction to come up, is a copy of Social Physics, the awesome book from Professor Sandy Pentland and the Human Dynamics group, where have a seat in the media lab. And if you look at how they look at identity here, the many facets of identity and the data that we can derive and the insights from it, one can see that there could be a path for better optimization of what people, communities, and places optimize for that happiness, that utopia. Meanwhile, there's wrongdoers also on the internet who must be dealt with in not utopia. Yeah. Sanctioned.id is going to show us the way.
Sanction.io.
Everything else is ID.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Okay, so we went through some things, starting to code things out, which one of us will talk about in a moment, but I'm just going to go through a couple, start talking about some things. So once again, to recap, Sanction.io is a platform for flagging people who say and do bad things on Telegram, as just as a test case. About 80% of all the talk about cryptocurrencies, ICOs, happens on the Telegram platform. And so the highest level thing that we decided, there's a continuum of consequences. So like at the very, very top level is the concept of having like a naughty list that would lead to a class action lawsuit against an ICO that was doing bad things. But that there's like a very, that can be a very high bar to jump over. And then there could also be what was the it could be there could be difficulty with the solvency of the defendant and things like that. But overall, the concept of having the consequence would still be a net benefit for the community. So decided to keep on working on the project. There's also the question of liability. So whether or not the platform, or not whether or not, but rather what liability the platform would have. So that's actually still an open question, but there's a concept that could potentially be under the safe harbor principle by the Digital Copyright Act. And there's a couple other things where a publisher or like a digital platform is not liable for the statements of the parties that use it. Let's see here. And then also there's a big question of where would we have the jurisdiction? What's the best place to do it? Should sanctioned be in the US, in the European Union, maybe have it on the Isle of Man or Guernsey or something? We decided that the United States is the best jurisdiction because it has the best laws for class action suits.
Yep, all the best laws.
Yes.
We won.
And then got a really great suggestion from Andrew. There's only a couple of us here, but there were quite a few people in the group. And there's a concept of how do you prove, so something with class action is you have to prove that you've been damaged. So with cryptocurrency, a lot of people don't want, you want to keep your keys private. And I had the concept of someone submitting like an API with an exchange, which is apparently a terrible idea because people have been getting hacked that way. So Andrew had the concept of someone doing like a token transaction, pun intended, a small transaction to a stake bucket, where then now you would have access, you could see the wallet on the chain, and then you could see this person had so many tokens from such and such an ICO. So there were a lot of ideas that went around, these are a couple, and I'm gonna hand it over.
I'm not Andrew. It's amazing and keeps being referred to. I'm Alex. So I was the only software developer in the group, and I tried to create a Telegram bot to implement some of this functionality. And what I can say is that this is a really important problem because it's arguable that pretty much every ICO out there, except maybe a couple, are scams. And we don't want that. We don't want people getting scammed. I think there's some websites out there that David was showing me where they would post lists of all these ICO scams and really call attention to them and stuff like that. So we'd be kind of continuing in that vein and just, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of ways this can go, and there's a lot of things that are hard to figure out, like how do you prevent like a denial of service attack where everybody is just reporting random scams, and how do you process the complaints? Do we have to have actual human moderators there? And probably, at least initially to some extent. Anyway, I didn't get the bot working. Well, I got a bot working technically, and that the bot was online, but it didn't do anything. But I think it's something, there's some useful functionality that could be implemented by someone who either has a little more time than I did, or who is more familiar with working on this stuff. So yeah, it's a cool idea.
There you go. Thank you. Great, thanks. Sanctions.io. Making it utopian again. All right, and so now, last but not least of the projects, let me check, did it, other than Vibe Chain, were there any other projects to report out? Okay, great. So Vibe Chain, where are you guys at?
Yeah. Here.
Thank you.
I just want to set up my vibe here. Come and move that in my direction. So thankful for that, such a blessing, yeah. Turn every situation into heaven, yeah. Oh, you are my sunrise on the darkest day. Got me feeling some kind of way. Make me wanna savor every moment slowly.
Hear that song?
You fit me till I love how you put it on.
Whatever stress of life, no more. Whatever's going on, we are there. We can talk. We are inspired. So this is what the person gives you to do. I want to tell you that over those, from yesterday to today, the Vibe Chain got an upgrade.
All right.
At first, the Vibe Chain, it wasn't connected well with the blockchain. But I connected with a bunch of people here, especially my colleagues here, Mr. Keynes. He put the blockchain and the Vibe Chain. So I will let him tell you how we are putting the blockchain and the Vibe Chain.
All right.
Keynes, how do we do?
Yeah. That was quite an introduction. I don't know if I can keep up with that. So, after the idea was explained yesterday and I came, I went home and I actually thought about this idea. I thought it was rather compelling. Another part that wasn't discussed that I think is really interesting that can be done in time is something that was done way back in the ages when cryptography in 1990 was coming about, and it was key signing parties. So something that we're looking to do that potentially, in addition to setting the vibe and creating a party, is adding that trust element to that party. And so identity is created by the relationships you make with that identity. So when you go to a party, you can have a key signing party. And so what the blockchain does is it allows you to lubricate what is sometimes not a fun experience, everyone just signing each other's keys. So we haven't implemented that use case yet, but I think what this provides is a recognition back into the past where key signing parties were very important to identity within public and private keys. And so what we've done is integrated viewport, so you're able to request a self-sovereign identity into your decentralized application. So you can log in with viewport, it'll pull down your information, and then you have RSVP the party. Right now, we currently just have a smart contract deployed to the Ethereum blockchain. It's a token contract, but we're going to change that up. So when you RSVP, you submit that you're going to go to this party. The person who's throwing it can either agree to let you in or not. And then we're going to use IPFS to allow you to submit 5 songs that you want to see within the party. So you want to have, Despacito or whatever else you want to play. That'll be hashed as it gets sent to IPFS. So your playlist will then be stored within the smart contract. And as you enter into this party, we're going to see that you have entered, and then we can reference your party list. So if you actually show up to the party, your songs will be played, and then other people can vote on those. So we've got a basic implementation that just disappeared. That's what we have so far, is log in with decentralized identity. and then RSVP to a party, and then we're gonna work on the rest. And we're gonna get by them.
That's it.
Here, here.
Thank you.
Vibe chain.
I think, so we have one other report out. Can I use your browser?
Sure, yeah.
Set it up. Okay, I'll just say it. So we had a breakout discussion at 3:30 with conjointly with the Washington DC node of the Computational Blockchain Festival, and we took a look at principles for this self-sovereign identity and digital identity principles for individuals generally. We took a look at the sovereign identity networks principles, Christopher Allen's principles that Christian Smith mentioned as part of his talk yesterday, and some others, and started to ask what would overarching set of principles be for sovereign identity that could go span across the different technologies and would support and reflect people's expectations about their ownership and control of their own individual digital identity. And some of the interesting things that came up in the dialogue included looking at intellectual property and personal property as one possible set of rules. We also talked about what happens when people die, like what happens to their property and their identity at that point. We took a look at the Uniform Law, I think it's the Fiduciary Access to Digital Assets Act as one of the possible legal frameworks. And I don't know, what else, do you remember, Brian or Bob or Christian, anyone, and what else happened?
Conversion.
I tried conversion and like trust. So people were talking about could there be a situation like when you have property and other people are using it for a certain period of time, do they gain rights to it potentially? Could that happen inadvertently with attributes of identity or identity services, or maybe identity functions that have been delegated to others, passed down? And we were looking for also what kind of remedies do people get when aspects of their identity have been utilized or maybe abused by others? Are there monetary damages? Could there be equitable remedies? So we were looking at some of the legal dimensions, I would say, of development for like a set of principles that could apply, so people would have expectations about their own digital identity, their sovereign identity. And one of the good things that happened as a result of that was people, they were participating from actually around the country and internationally in the Hangout part of it, decided they want to keep working on this Scratchpad document we have in a wiki, which you can find in the report out. So if you have ideas about that, hack with us too, and you add your ideas to the wiki. Okay, so that I think concludes the report outs at this point, and what's going to happen next is we're keeping the space open into the evening, and so teams that would like to keep hacking on your projects, please do keep hacking. And if you're interested in other projects that you heard and you'd like to jump in, I encourage you to do that. Especially if you've been sort of floating, you haven't quite found a project yet and you heard something that you liked, find that team. Now while everyone's here and gathered in the Venture Cafe and offer to help. And tomorrow at 1 p.m. We'll have an opportunity at the Media Lab on the 5th floor for teams to make their final presentations. You can kind of see what you came up with. And then we also have another opportunity to do a discussion. So that time frame is pretty open right now, so we can make with it what we'd like to for those that are around tomorrow. But for right now, I just want to thank everybody for showing up and for bringing your A games to this hackathon. And we've been getting great questions and great play from venues around the world, some of which have never done a legal hackathon before, and kind of checking other nodes to see how to do it. And so everyone here has been inspirational, and check back after the hackathon to see all the great projects and ideas that came out of the venues around the world for the festival. So with that, happy hacking, and see you tomorrow. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Now we go offline.
Hit the blockchain block.